non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com. Purple Daily, presented by Surly Brewing Company.
Has 4 job interviews this week. I forgot to put the tweet in front of me. It's Minnesota, Chicago,
Denver,
and Miami, right? Those are the 4. Yeah, there it is. Thank you. Denver, Minnesota, Miami, and Chicago he's going to interview with this week. Dan Quinn is the hot guy. He's the guy everybody wants. He and Jim Harbaugh, I think, are the 2 really interesting names to keep an eye on.
That's our friend of the show right there, Mike Greenberg. Friend of the show.
Greeny, stealing ideas from us left and right.
He requests our permission.
Yep.
And then we grant it, and then he takes our ideas onto his platforms. Jim Harbaugh, by the way, I love that. So Michigan has apparently made him an offer for a restructured contract with a raise, and they're just like waiting for him to sign it. And then yesterday, I think it was Bruce Feldman had another report that if Harbaugh's offered the Raiders, like Harbaugh just keeps putting these feelers out there like, if the Raiders, they haven't called me in a while. Well, the Dolphins, would love to live in Miami during the winter. Sounds great.
That's interesting.
Yeah, he's sitting out there. I don't think he's an option for the Vikings, but
he can win.
He can. He's like
a while.
4 years and then burns everybody out, and then he's
shelf
on
life
the
guy,
next thing.
totally.
Yeah.
At least in the pros.
Yeah. So this is Purple Daily. No shelf life on this show. We just keep churning. Daily Vikings entertainment, speculation, therapy. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. That's our mantra on this show. Phil Mackey, Judd Zolgad, our executive producer, Declan Goff. And this show is presented by Surly Brewing Company and also TCL, one of the world's best-selling consumer electronics brands. New lineup of award-winning TVs delivering the most entertainment with stunning resolution, all at an affordable cost. Enjoy more of the things you love with TCL. So you heard Mike Greenberg kicking around the week of Dan Quinn now that the Cowboy season is over. He's got interviews with 4 different teams, including the Vikings yesterday. They interviewed Dan Quinn. And I know that Dan Quinn's name, when you bring it up, this is just sort of an unscientific poll, but when I feel like most Vikings fans are just immediately, I'm good. I'm good on Dan Quinn because of the way things ended with Atlanta and the way things ended in the Super Bowl 5 or 6 years ago, where they blew a 25-point lead. I think, that in itself is enough for people to just be like, we've seen it with Dan Quinn. I'm good. He's 51 years old now. He's not like a young, hot offensive mind, a Kellen Moore, Matt LaFleur with the Packers. But I just want to go through his resume real quick and get your guys' thoughts on Dan Quinn. Let's entertain this for a moment while most people are dismissing it out of hand. So as a defensive coordinator, Dan Quinn led the Legion of Boom defense in Seattle to its peak heights in 2013 and 14, I believe it was. That's one of the best defenses. That's like one of the 6 best defenses in the last 50 years of the NFL. Number 1 points defense in back-to-back seasons. They should have had 2 Super Bowls, but he was one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL less than 10 years ago. And then he comes back around with Dallas and brings one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year to top 10 in points allowed. And, Micah Parsons reaching his peak. Now, some of this is talent. Trayvon Diggs, they've produced a really good defense in Dallas in 2021. The Vikings have a garbage defense. Part of it's personnel. Some of it might be Mike Zimmer losing his touch, but the Vikings defense could use some upgrades. As a head coach, Dan Quinn took Atlanta to a Super Bowl where they had a 25-point lead over Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, and the New England Patriots. They also had top 10 yardage offenses basically every year of Dan Quinn's career. Even though he's a defensive guy, he hired well on the offensive side. His coaching tree includes both Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan. So when you stack all of that up and you say, boy, blind resume test, that's pretty interesting. But I feel like everyone's kind of out on Dan Quinn. What do you guys think?
I think the problem is this. I think Dan Quinn has a lot of the same background in some ways defensively. So he clearly has been a head coach with Zim had not been before he came here. But I think people just see this as defensive guy, old defensive guy, must be Zim, right? Because there are parallels in the fact that they both coached defense. That's a strong suit. There's a few things that intrigue me here. One thing that intrigues me is, as good as Micah Parsons was during his rookie season, I'm intrigued by the fact of how he was used, which I think was extremely creative.
Yes.
So like you could have said, Micah Parsons is this, and that's all he's going to be. He's going to be good at it, though. Dan Quinn said,
like the Vikings and Anthony Barr.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not throwing out names or accusations. That was you. But I am going to say Micah Parsons was used in a very creative way that made him even better. And it probably helped him to quickly achieve things that would have taken far more time if he had ever been allowed to achieve those. Dan Quinn sounds like much more of a galvanizing influence. So people are drawn to Quinn. I would not say, trying to be careful here because it's not fair to dump on Zimmer constantly. I don't think Zimmer was a galvanizing person. I think that he was very smart. When he had his defensive fastball, I think he was really good. So, but
Zimmer was more of like a master schemer who had just enough of the rest of the head coach personality and leadership. Like he wasn't great at those things, but
Dan Quinn sounds like a people person. He's a people person, damn it. Which helps. I would be curious to know in the interview he did with the Vikings, how much he was asked to and talked about what he learned from that blown Super Bowl, because that had a huge effect on him and that team. They went from being an 11-5 team, and they blew the lead in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, to being 10-6, to being 7-9, 7-9, 0-5. He's gone. Now, here's what I will say without knowing how the Zoom sessions went or anything. If you're going to go down this path, I personally, and this is just from like what we've discussed and what we've read, I am more intrigued by Raheem Morris than Dan Quinn. But I get your point, Phil, and I do think it's unfair to just flat out say, well, Dan Quinn's a defensive guy and Mike was too, and they're both older coaches, and I'm out. I think that's unfair. But Raheem Morris, in the conversation that we had, I believe it was on Purple Daily yesterday, is why I'm more intrigued by him and what he would bring as a air quote defensive guy than Dan Quinn.
So go deeper on that, because I like that you brought this up, because inherently and intrinsically, if you gave me two choices, Dan Quinn or Raheem Morris, I also would choose Raheem Morris. But I don't know why. Like Dan Quinn, isn't Dan Quinn a more accomplished version of Raheem Morris?
Okay, that is a Mackie and Judd, great question.
Part of it might be that Dan Quinn looks like the guy that can't figure out how to get his Zoom camera to work, right? So it's like he's not that. I mean, he's like 51. He's not. Zimmer's like 65.
Younger than I am, you SOB.
So it's Judd. Judd's Zoom camera doesn't work on his
You
laptop.
struggled to get your Zoom camera to work before.
Hey guys. Hey, Ziggy, Mark, you there? Hey, honey, this damn thing doesn't work. Keep it down out there, kids.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Let me know.
This thing on?
Let me know if you see me.
This thing on? I want the job. So here's why I'm more intrigued by Raheem Morris. I love the fact that at a young age he failed. But he didn't really fail. But he was put in a position to fail.
You could argue that he actually succeeded by winning 10 games with horrible infrastructure in 2009 or whatever it was.
He did. He failed himself. But he learned from it. He failed himself in the sense that the Glazers are like, okay, kid, you're our guy. And he's like, this is great. And then they're like, okay, kid, we're cutting basically all of the veterans that you value. And he didn't say, hold on a second. No. If that's what you're going to do, we got problems here. But he learned from that. I'm sure Dan Quinn has learned as well. But the thing about Morris that I think could be really, really key is he's still young. He's what, 44? And so like he's 10 years removed from the start of this experience, which at the time was probably jarring and not a ton of fun. But now I think is valuable. I like his age. I want a guy in 2022 that can not be players' friends, but relate to players. I'm going to continue to bang this drum. I love the fact that Raheem Morris, as a position coach, after his head coaching experience, went from the defensive side of the ball, which is, and I'm not, I'm saying a defensive coordinator type. So he's really good to, I'll coach wide receivers. Mm-hmm. There's just a lot of things in his bag that really intrigue me. Not to say that Dan Quinn's bad, but that's why I would go with the younger guy who I think has a chance to not be friends with players, but relate and definitely has experience now and knows both sides of the football.
Yeah, I think the more I've sort of sat on this question of why Raheem Morris and not Dan Quinn, even though Dan Quinn is more accomplished, it feels like Raheem Morris hasn't reached his full potential yet, that he's on a growth trajectory still, right? That there's unfinished business as a head coach, things that he learned 10, 11 years ago. And just, if you haven't listened to yesterday's episode of Purple Daily, we did a deep dive we did a bonus episode on Raheem Morris. That job in Tampa, a lot of people are looking and saying, he was like 10 games under 500 over 3 years. He like won 3 games and got fired his last year. Which is how they look at Todd Bowles too in New York with the Jets. But that Tampa team in at least a couple of those seasons, maybe all 3, was the lowest spending team in the NFL. This is when they were also going through a new CBA. They had an uncapped year at one point during his stint where some teams were spending a ton of money, and the Buccaneers had stripped it all down. There was the Buccaneers spent less money on their team in, I think, the first year of Raheem Morris's tenure than any team has spent on a roster in 15 years. They spent $80 million on their entire roster in one of those years, and the top spending team was 135 or 140. So they stripped everything down, and they still won 10 games with young players. And I just love some of the things we're hearing. The people that are going to bat for Raheem Morris, Mike Tomlin going to bat for him publicly, and Jalen Ramsey going to bat for him publicly. So maybe it's just an incorrect perception that Raheem Morris has more upside as a coach, but it kind of feels to me like we've seen Dan Quinn. Not that he's a finished product at 51. You can still certainly evolve, as Judd has done in his early 50s. You can evolve in your early 50s. But my sense is that we've seen Dan Quinn. He's a good coach, would probably be a competitive head coach. But we haven't seen the next step of Raheem Morris, and I'm curious as to what that is. Save this clip for old tweets exposed when Raheem Morris goes 2-15 or something. What do you think, Declan?
My curiosity with Dan Quinn is just trying to figure out who the hell is exactly Dan Quinn. So he was a defensive line coach with the Jets. He actually was a defensive line coach at the University of Florida before he took the job with the Seahawks and the Legion of Boom, the #1 defense, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman. Yeah, a legendary, might be one of the greatest defenses ever assembled when it's all said and done. But then he goes to Atlanta. And this is how Atlanta's defense ranks under Dan Quinn when he was head coach, and just in terms of points allowed. 14th, 27th, 9th, 28th, 20th, 20th, 29th, 17th, and fired. But when he was the head coach in Atlanta, his offenses in points were 21st, 1st, 15th, 10th, 13th, 13th, 16th, fired.
Yardage, they were even better, which actually is kind of an indictment that they were always a top 7 or 8 yardage offense, and they couldn't cash in on the point side.
So did he has obviously defensive background because he goes to the Cowboys and turns around that defense. And the Cowboys defense last year was 7th in points, but 19th in yards. So they did a pretty decent job, at least not allowing touchdowns, which should be the end goal of your defense. But when he was a head coach, the Falcons weren't known for being a defensive team necessarily. They're known for being an offensive team. So is that a product of him either molding to be an offensive guy, or was that someone who lost his fastball defensively? I just don't know who he truly is.
It's a product of hiring, actually, the offensive side, which is a credit to him. So he hired Kyle Shanahan to be his offensive coordinator, and Matt LaFleur was the quarterback's coach for Matt Ryan during Matt Ryan's MVP season. Mm-hmm. So, this would be a credit to Dan Quinn. You bring him in and say, all right, so definitely need to fix the defense here, but we need to maximize some really talented offensive weapons. And I think his answer on that initial Zoom call, if they talked about this, would be, Well, I identified and hired two of the brightest young minds that are now playing each other this weekend and thriving as head coaches. So trust me, I can find an offensive mind to maximize that side of the ball. And I think that's what he would probably say.
And plus, if you are going to get this job and you come in and say, I am a defensive guy and I plan to build that defense out and we're going to be top 5, you don't get the job because this is an offensive team. So like, I actually like that Dan Quinn said, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones at the time, like that, there was a nice core group there that, to Phil's point, was clearly well coached. But yeah, the last thing that you want, I think, is a defensive guy to say, and I'll be focused on that side. I mean, we saw that. It worked for a while. But the Dan Quinn thing, what Declan just broached doesn't bug me because I think he probably looked at the pieces in place there with the Falcons and said, hell yeah, let's go. And yards, scoring defense ultimately, obviously important, but like I don't get caught up completely in yards. If you can shut teams down at the proper time and more importantly outscore them, that's the thing is if you give this Vikings offense a chance and it's well built, you're going to be in some games that absolutely turn into shootouts. But guess what? You're going to win some of those games.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, let us know for the audience. Let us know what you think. I know most people are just dismissing Dan Quinn just for all the things we just talked about. But give us a shout in the YouTube comment section here on this episode and let us know. What do you think? Are you considering Dan Quinn as a fan, even though he's not the splashiest name? He's kind of a recycled name. Are we just overlooking him because of what happened in that Super Bowl?
Of the supposed defensive guys on this list, I think I would put Raheem Morris first, Dan Quinn second, Bowles would probably be third. And I don't know exactly why with Bowles, but I think Quinn would probably be second. You know what, too? And it's not fair to Todd Bowles, but that Jets job is such a cesspool.
It's so hard to.
And I don't know if you can learn from that because it's such a piece of crap.
Yeah, that's
right.
Tough. It's tough. Like anyone who flamed out with the Lions, with the Browns, the Jets, and even the Texans to some extent, I feel like
poor David Culley. He gets 1 year in that bleep hole place, and they're like, "You're fired." Well,
I'm not sure he was ever qualified to begin with.
He probably wasn't, but still, like that was the ultimate. Hey, take this job. You're gonna fail.
Yeah, I mean, hey, a guy probably made $1 million to
but
coach an NFL team.
Still embarrassing.
Assistant somewhere.
The thing, too, that I think becomes incredibly important about this job, and this is where I hope the Vikings see this right as they go through this process, is I know that Zim was a tyrant, especially by the end of his coaching tenure, and I know that he rubbed people the wrong way. But I think there's a big difference between trying to get a guy who's different than Zim because he's enthusiastic and rah-rah and a smart person. Morris strikes me as being smart. And he can relate, and I'm sure he's nothing like Mike was. But the one thing in football that we've seen, right, is like, well, Glenn Mason is very serious, and he's, Tim Brewster, he's, and I'm not trying to insinuate that the Vikings are going to do that, but like, I would not be excited if a person who's just enthusiastic comes in. I think to me, the top priority is actually intelligence and smarts and the ability to relate to people, which is not some BS, let's go team. And look, being upbeat is great. But I think there's a difference between this guy's really upbeat and really gung-ho, and this guy's just really damn smart.
I think my current list in order for head coach is Raheem Morris, number 1, Doug Peterson. I'm going to say Raheem Morris, number 1, Nathaniel Hackett, number 2, Doug Peterson, number 3, and Byron Leftwich, number 4. And I know that they have not spoken with Byron Leftwich yet.
Right.
I don't know if they will. But I think that's my current list.
Boy, I might put Peterson second and Hackett third.
I wouldn't fight you there.
Because he's coached before.
Yeah,
he's pretty good. Yeah, that's probably right, though. That's probably right.
And maybe Dan Quinn is fifth. I'm gonna put Dan Quinn fifth right now. I'm gonna give Dan Quinn some love. Put him on my short list, but like as an alternate. If one of these other guys like takes a job, then he
Dan, we'll get back to
moves
you.
in, yeah.
Don't call us, we'll call you. What's going on there, guys? Dan Quinn.
All right, we a couple more things on the show here today. Rick Spielman opened up about, quite frankly, his failure to find quarterbacks as Vikings GM. We're going to get to some of those clips and random Viking of the week, but Judd hasn't failed to lose weight the last few months.
Oh, I have not, Phil, and that is, of course, thanks to our friends at Livia Weight Control Centers. Down 30-plus pounds since I started, and I want you to join me now on the Livia. I did an 8-week challenge where you get your first 8 weeks for free. That's right, for free. First 8 weeks, I lost 26 pounds. Imagine getting to springtime and you've lost 26 pounds, and you haven't paid them yet. That is the offer. It's a great one. 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia.com, Livia.com, 855-GO-LIVEA. And by the way, if you're in state here, certainly call them or go to the website. But here's the best part, consultation via Zoom if you don't. So if you're in Florida, New York, Los Angeles, Utah, I don't care. If you enjoy this show and are looking to lose weight, Livia.com. They can help you anywhere in the country.
Awesome. All right, Dex, let's play the first clip here. So this is from the Moving the Sticks podcast earlier this week with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. And they do just a lot of deep X's and O's. They're both longtime scouts. And so they brought Rick Spielman on the show to talk about just a little bit about his time sort of ending in Minnesota and the current playoff teams. And Spielman, when talking about some of the quarterbacks that are currently left in the playoffs, took the conversation in a different direction. Let's play the first clip here.
When you talk about the quarterbacks, and I've made some mistakes through my career on quarterbacks, and I always thought the number one thing to look for was the intelligence part of the game. How smart are these guys? And we do a lot of different types of psychological testing, a lot of different types of intelligence testing. But what I learned, not only do you have to be smart, but you have to have mental quickness and how quickly can you process things.
There's more here, but just to pause it real quick. That's really
frozen.
interesting. Declan's frozen.
Not frozen.
You gonna?
It's good again.
You want to fix it, or should we just let you sit
Yeah,
there frozen?
I'll see what I can do. You guys keep talking.
Okay.
It's a good freeze.
So
jealous.
what do you think of that? That he always used to value intelligence above all else, and then realized somewhere along the line, and we're going to get into more of the meat and potatoes here, that processing information quickly is just as important as how smart you are.
Okay, I think a lot of things. I'll say a couple. One is, if that Rick had existed when he was GM, that's really good. Like, that's insightful. And I'm not saying that he has to be an open book. But I think there would have been a lot more sympathy towards his plight if we had heard that Rick instead of the Rick who is GM and is trying to deflect things or not talk. But I don't understand how he didn't learn that quicker and subsequently gain confidence in himself then, because it felt like, Phil, by the end, he had sort of like bailed on QBs until he took Mond. Kirk was a guy who came here established. But it really sounds to me, not sure what you think about this, like he's talking about the Ponder pick, because Christian Ponder's a really smart dude. We can rip him, but he is a book smart dude.
He's back on Twitter, by the way. He was like off Twitter for years, and he was tweeting during the playoff games.
Interesting. But I mean, he's a guy who wowed them because of his intelligence. What he couldn't do was process. So I guess my question to Rick off of that would be, as you learned that, which I guess you should know, but as you learned that, why didn't you gain confidence again? And it seems like you didn't.
I'm going to play another clip here from Rick expanding.
And the one thing that we really tried to get at, which we evolved over the last couple of years, was I can go and interview a quarterback, and I interviewed many down at the combine, or we had a whole program set in place on, let's go out, let's visit this quarterback. The offensive coordinator is going to have a plan. He's going to install a scheme. He's going to install concepts of a passing game and pass protections. And a quarterback can sit there. We kind of watch to see if they took copious notes. And a lot of these guys went up there and talked verbatim what the coordinator said, and even sometimes sounded better than the coordinator that's explaining it. I was like, God, this guy's going to be a hell of a coach someday.
Interesting. So, here's the situation. Here are the reads, et cetera, et cetera. And you get up there for 10, 15 minutes and you look like a maestro. You look like a genius, right? But you don't get 10 or 15 minutes to look like a genius when Von Miller or Aaron Donald are coming at you. Here's the third clip.
The point that I missed was that's great. You can go up and draw that, and this safety's rolling down, and this linebacker's coming off the edge, and, where's your hot reads and stuff. They can talk about it, but that's a 10-minute process. Yeah. Can they do that in 2.5 seconds? So we really try to hone in and focus on not only the intelligence, but also the mental quickness and how quickly they can read and respond, because there's a lot of smart people out there. But if you can't process that in the 2.5 seconds that you have, that's where I've saw it, and myself personally had some failures.
I think I commend him, man. I wish he would have been more like this for the 12 plus 15 years he was speaking at podiums and stuff and in his job with the Vikings. But I think when they asked him about the quarterbacks that are left in the playoffs right now, and you're like, what do you think of the Burrows and stuff? They didn't preface it by saying, now, Rick, I know you've struggled to find quarterbacks, and so let's take your opinion with a grain of salt here. Like, they asked a former general manager about the quarterbacks left in the NFL, and he felt that he had to add the sort of qualifier of, now, before I give my opinion, like, I've had some failures identifying quarterbacks, and I just thought that was a really interesting piece of introspection from him.
It is, but it brings me to have more questions, which is, how do you not know that? Like, if I put Christian Ponder at a board, I guarantee you he did great. I guarantee you he killed it. Absolutely. Christian Ponder is a smart guy. But,
and he always used to say easily correctable, because in his mind he's like, oh, yeah, like, all we have to do is this. Well, but then when you're in the live action playing field, it's like, oh, that solution that I came up with at practice is moving a lot faster.
What do you do when you watch film? You see it slow down, right? I can't tell you the amount of hockey players who get put in the press box and are like, the game's simple up there.
Yeah.
Like, to me, to Declan, to you, The game's simple. I'm watching it from above. It's great. So, but what I don't understand is, okay, I can understand early in your career, that's a problem. But at some point in time, I would think by the time that you become a GM, the synapses are like, okay, this guy's good and he's really convincing. This goes back to what we've talked about for years now. And I've always been convinced that in some ways the combine is the devil, because you go to the combine and you see a person's athletic traits, and these guys are going to be pros. So guess what? They're good athletes. And you sit down, and this whole thing, and Rick valued it so much I sat down with this guy and he told me, and that's what he's talking about, right? We send him up to the chalkboard and he diagrams plays, or we do this, or we do that. Ultimately, the reality is this: your film, no matter where you played, is the Bible of you. Your film is. Because if I slow things down, or I tell you, the scariest thing, you can fool me. Oh man, great kid. Turns out to be a terrible kid. The second thing, though, is, these guys play football. If you just say, hey, go up to the board and show me this, the majority are probably going to be pretty damn good. So that, I guess I'm just so confused as to where you wouldn't be like, okay, Johnny is great in the combine, and we sat down with Johnny, and he's a real good kid. But we got to dissect the film more than anything else, which I'm sure they did. But.
And one thing that he talked about, too, just sort of in the flow of this conversation, was they have worked with, I think Heath Farwell was part of this company, where you could put a sort of a 360-degree camera at eye level where the quarterback's eyes would be, and you can put that camera at practice right behind the line of scrimmage. And so the starting quarterback's going to get most of the reps with the first-team offense against the first-team defense, and some of the backup quarterbacks just don't get as many reps. And they had this system in place where they would film practice from the quarterback's perspective, almost like virtual reality. And then they would have the backup quarterbacks then strap the VR goggles on throughout the rest of the day or week and take those same reps just on their own. And so they put a lot of work into just like trying to increase reps for backup and young quarterbacks and even starting quarterbacks. But he said the pandemic kind of derailed like some of that work that they were doing a couple years ago. But like this work was going on 4 or 5, 6 years ago too. So I'm a little confused. It's funny because he clearly has identified the biggest hiccup in his game as a GM, right? But the gap between Kellen Mond, I'm trying to think back, like, was it Teddy Bridgewater? Like, Teddy Bridgewater they took the Teddy Bridgewater shot in 2013 or 14. And they didn't take another first, second, or third round quarterback for 7 years.
Yeah.
Right?
So he clearly, I think, lost confidence. But you're right. It would be like, why wouldn't you, like, did he just bail at that point? It seems like
Oh, man. What do you guys think the future holds for Rick? So he's only 59 years old. I think he did tell those guys on the podcast he's going to go on a vacation with his wife for a while and get away, but he's got some opportunities lined up, but he didn't get into detail. Do you think he becomes an NFL general manager again?
I think he spends a year at least in TV because he can do it. Like that's the thing is, if you go and listen to that podcast, that Rick is pretty good, and certainly knows his stuff. So I think he's going to spend at least a year in TV. And will he get another shot as a GM? I mean, he knows lots of people. It's that sort of league. So there's
the Lions would be an easy, like his brother's working for the Lions, right?
You know what? You know what? I wouldn't give it to him, but I'm going to say yes. Yes, I'm going to say he spends at least a year out of the game, but still in the game as far as watching film and keeping track of personnel. And I'm going to say he gets one more shot because I think he's going to say, hey, look, we had success. At the end, it blew up. That's partially on Mike, if not mostly on Mike, in his opinion. So, yeah, I'll say yes, he will.
Yeah, I think he gets one too. You got to keep in mind all these other positions that are opening up and whatnot. Like other teams have to fill voids, whether it's not just GM, but player personnel, scouting, all this stuff. Like, does he get the actual title of GM again? I don't know. I think that remains to be seen, but I do think he finds his way back on an NFL team doing some type of similar capacity role that he had before.
Yeah, I think he definitely adds a ton of value to a front office. It's kind of 50-50 as to whether he gets sort of the head job in a front office, but if he wants to work high up in an NFL front office, he will for the next 5 years for sure. 59 is still... Like, you still have probably 5 or 10 years left of...
It's getting pretty old as far as I'm concerned. I'm tired these days, and I'm only 52. I can only imagine 7 years from now.
You look like you need a Surly right now.
Is that my problem?
No, you look...
You know what? Here's the thing. Rick Spielman has been fired because he couldn't identify the most important thing in his life. And make no mistake, that was quarterbacks. Well, guess what Judd Zolgad can do?
Judd Zolgad, colleges for his kids. It's not
a gift for his wife. I don't have kids. I don't have kids. And Dawn and Stella are great. But I'm going to tell you right now, what I'm good at is identifying draft picks. And I don't mean football players. I mean beers. There's only one draft pick here, folks. Surly Brewing, Surly Furious IPA. In fact, you know what? This weekend, as you're watching the games, yeah, that's right. Show us your cans on Twitter.
Show us your cans.
At Jay Zolgad. I always appreciate it. Declan, not surprisingly, does it. Join him. Show us your cans. Show us what you're drinking. And make it a Surly Furious.
That's right. Show us your cans. Also, hey, Federated's been helping business owners for over 100 years. If you are a business owner and you enjoy Purple Daily on a daily basis, then maybe Federated is a great partner for you. They're basically an offensive line, a competent one for your business, an all-pro offensive line. They're here to fend off risks, maximize the success of your business, and you can tap into their many resources by going to federatedinsurance.com. Check out information on My Shield, and remember, at Federated, it's our business to protect yours. It is time for the random Viking of the week here on Purple Daily.
Hey, the fans are there, huh? The crowd?
Yeah, we have a live audience here.
Live studio
in
audience.
Seattle or where?
Great. No, they're just like out in they're in the internet ether is where they are. So Judd, if I'm tallying this right, Judd has a 15-6 lead on Declan and a 3-game winning streak on Random Viking of the Week.
Okay.
You've correctly in the last few weeks identified Mitch Berger, Naufahu Tahi, and Captain Munnerlin. Declan's last correct guess was about a month ago. Daryl Bevel snuck a coach in.
Yeah, you did, and I didn't like you for it, but good job by Declan.
It's not called Random Vikings Player of the Week. It's just Random Vikings.
I just said I didn't
I
like
might
you
sneak
for
an
it.
equipment manager in on you guys. At
Dennis
some point.
Ryan.
Wow. Got it before the first clue. He gets it.
What was his name? Bus Mertz. All right.
All right, so here's how this works. I throw out a series of clues. You guys each get up to 3 incorrect guesses before you are eliminated. And if you want to ask me questions, you can. I have the ability to refuse to answer if I feel like it is what's best for the game. This Random Viking of the Week hails originally from Norco, California. I don't know where that is.
Norco?
Yep, no Googling.
No, I'm writing down the clues. I write them down.
This Random Viking of the Week played college football in the Pac-12 and is the youngest of 6 siblings, all of which were also college athletes. Just 6 college athletes roaming around. A great family of athletes.
Good parents.
Good genes.
Yeah, great genes.
This Random Viking of the Week is currently a senior manager of sales enablement at a company called Asurion in Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, he is a senior manager of sales enablement. That is his current job title.
What does that mean?
At a company called Asurion in Nashville, Tennessee.
What is that? What is sales enablement? Do
I
you even
know.
know?
He is the
coordinator,
manager of
manager.
enabling sale. He enables the sales to take place. He enables the selling.
That might be the stupidest title I've ever heard, but that's
I don't know.
has nothing to
could
do
help
with.
some things. You never know.
I mean, executive producer is a good title.
He spent 6 years in the NFL with 2 teams. And I will say, in those 6 years, he played on only one team that won more than 6 games.
Ooh.
He played on a lot of bad NFL teams,
Ooh.
which is probably part of the reason why he's currently a senior manager of sales enablement at Asurion.
6 years in the
Nashville,
NFL.
Tennessee.
He played his cards right.
Jeez.
Yeah, he made some money playing 6 years in the NFL.
Okay.
His 2 Vikings coaches were Brad Childress and Leslie Frazier. His father, Todd, was a running back at Cal State Fullerton and played in the USFL and also coached him in high school. In this Random Viking of the Week's football life, he has been teammates with Brett Favre and Andrew Luck. I see the wheels turning. I know Declan wants this really bad. Declan took it so hard last week when he couldn't get Mitch Berger. Let's see here. This Random Viking of the Week was one of the best players in college football. But obviously, because he is a senior manager of sales enablement at Asurion in Nashville, Tennessee, his NFL career didn't quite live up to the hype. He was drafted by the Vikings and made about $10 million playing football over 6 years. Most of it with another team. One of his football coaches was Jim Harbaugh. Silence from you guys.
No, I'm thinking. I'm sure Dex is too. So Jim Harbaugh. So
This Random Viking of the Week.
All right.
Is listed at 6 feet tall, 231 pounds.
Okay. One of the best players in college football.
Toby Gerhart.
Oh yeah,
Nice.
There it is. Declan Goff.
Nice, Declan.
Back
Way to go.
on the board, dude.
Way to go.
There it is. Yeah, he was a unanimous All-American at
Yeah, he was
Stanford
good.
in 2009. Ran
Vikings-
for 1,800 yards,
Yeah.
bunch of touchdowns.
They trade up to get him, right?
Yeah, they traded. They
draft
drafted
pick
him
with
51st
Houston.
overall, man. And
Yeah.
he did have some injuries and stuff. He signed a fairly decent contract with the Jaguars.
That's
But
right.
oof, yeah,
That's
he
right.
ca-
Free agent pickup. That's right.
Yeah, but he caught the end of the Brad Childress train wreck and then the
Yep.
Leslie
Yeah.
Frazier years, and then obviously Peterson was the
Right.
bell cow
Was-
running back there. So
Was he a Heisman finalist?
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty sure he was.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice
he's
work,
won-
Dex. Dex is back on the
There we
board.
Declan is
All right.
back, dude. He's back.
Can sleep this
He
week.
won the Archie Griffin Award in 2009.
Yeah, he
he
was,
won the Jim Brown Award in 2009. He was the Pac-10 at the time. I misled you guys. Offensive Player of the Year. And was he a Heisman? I just want to see. I thought he was a Heisman finalist.
I thought he was too. He ran for so many yards.
Yeah, he was one of 5 finalists for the 2009 Heisman and finished in second place behind Mark Ingram,
Wow.
Alabama, right?
He ran for
Right, 20.
1,800 yards in 09.
Yeah, he had a bonkers college career. 1,800 yards rushing and 28 rushing touchdowns for Stanford in 2009. What? Didn't quite fulfill it. And he went back to Stanford and finished out, I believe, a business degree, and is just he's a working man. He's a working man. So Toby
I didn't
Gerhart,
realize he got a real job.
yeah.
That-
I mean, if he invested right, he probably. I mean, I hope
had to-
it's work that he enjoys because he.
I was going
made
to say he
$10
had to
million.
have. I would think he invested, right? Because he was not exactly a party guy.
Oh, maybe he put it all into.
I wouldn't call him a bore ass, but I wouldn't call
Kurt
him an exciting
Schilling's
guy.
baseball card company that went,
Oh.
Oh
yeah.
boy! Oh boy!
or
Oh boy.
comic books or something. I don't know what it was.
All right.
Sometimes athletes make bad investments, but there it is. Declan's back,
Way to get back on the board, Dex.
Random
Way to get
Viking
back
of
on
the week.
board.
Tomorrow we'll be back at you here. We'll keep our eye on all these coaching interviews and GM interviews, daily Vikings entertainment and speculation and therapy. See you guys.